I trusted one person more than I trusted myself. For 6 years, I handed over everything I had built to him and never once looked back to check if it was still there. As always, he smiled at me again on Monday morning. He would shake my hand at every meeting. He would say things were going well and I would believe him because I had no reason not to. Then one morning an email came from someone I didn't know. No subject line. No message. Just an attachment. I almost deleted it. I wish I could tell you why I opened it instead. I sat at my desk without moving for 47 minutes. When I finally exhaled, I realized everything I thought I knew was wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It's best if I go back to the very beginning and start from the beginning, because the beginning is where all the trust was built. My name is Miranda. I created something from nothing. This is a sentence that sounds simple but contains years of sleepless nights, rejected presentations, and moments when I truly believed I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I was 32 years old in 2015, and had spent the previous 8 years climbing corporate ladders that seemed designed to keep people like me stuck on the lower rungs. I watched colleagues with half my skills get promoted because they had the right connections, the right backgrounds, the right way of speaking in meetings that made executives comfortable. I was told to be patient. I was told my time would come. I was told many things that turned out to be lies. And by 2014, I was tired of listening. This idea of mine was born from my frustration, actually, as most good ideas come from there. I watched dozens of companies struggle with technology implementations, watched them hire expensive consultants who offered generic solutions, watched them waste money on systems that didn't work and support contracts that were never honored. I knew I could do better. I knew I could build a consulting firm that truly listened to clients, stayed with them through difficult processes, delivered what it promised. What I didn't know was how to manage money. Spreadsheets would make my eyes glaze over. Financial projections felt like a foreign language I had never learned. I needed someone who understood that world. Someone who could translate my vision into numbers that investors would trust. I met him at a startup incubator in September 2014. He was giving a presentation on financial management for early-stage companies. I was sitting in the back row, feeling like an imposter among all these confident entrepreneurs who knew exactly what they were doing. He had a presence. The kind of presence that made you lean forward when he spoke, that made his opinions seem like facts. Harvard MBA. 7 years at one of the most prestigious financial firms in the world. A track record of helping startups scale. He was everything I wasn't. Polished, connected, fluent in the language of money. After his presentation, I introduced myself and told him about my idea. I expected a polite rejection. Instead, he asked questions. Detailed questions. Questions that made me feel like what I was saying actually mattered. By the end of our conversation, he had given me his card and told me to call if I ever needed help with the financial side. Called 3 days later. We became partners in January 2015. The arrangement was simple. I would manage operations, sales, client relationships. He would manage finances, accounting, everything involving numbers. We set the equity split at 60-40 in my favor because it was my idea and I was doing the client-facing work, but he had full control over the financial infrastructure. He set up the accounting systems. He established banking relationships. He created processes for invoicing, payroll, and expenses. I was grateful. I was so focused on developing the product and winning clients that I didn't have time to worry about spreadsheets. He worried about spreadsheets so I didn't have to. That was the partnership. That was the foundation of everything we built together. The first year was brutal in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Cold calls that went nowhere. Presentations that ended in silence. Nights when I questioned whether I had ruined my career for nothing. He was there through all of it. He worked without salary for the first 8 months, surviving on his savings while I depleted mine. He believed in what we were building even when I couldn't believe in it myself. He became more than a business partner. He became a friend. The kind of friend you call at midnight when anxiety won't let you sleep. The kind of friend who shows up at your door with pizza and bad movies when you're too exhausted to function. The kind of friend you trust completely because they've earned that trust over years by being exactly who they said they were. Or so I thought. The turning point came in October 2015. A manufacturing company in the Bay Area needed help with their inventory management system. Their previous consultants had failed. They were desperate. I pitched our approach and they said yes. The contract was worth $127,000. I remember calling him after the meeting and screaming into the phone, unable to believe someone had paid us real money to do what I loved. He laughed and said this was just the beginning. He was right about that part. By 2017 we had real momentum. 5 employees, an office in a co-working space, revenue approaching $500,000. The quarterly report showed steady growth, healthy margins, a company becoming something significant. I would review these reports at the end of every quarter, but I wouldn't examine them. I would glance at the summary numbers, not at the projections. Move on. The details were his domain. The details were his area of expertise. The details were where I trusted him to catch anything I might miss. I need to tell you something about trust because I've thought about it every day for the past year and I still don't fully understand it. Trust is not a single decision. It's a pattern that builds slowly. A habit that becomes invisible because it's so consistent. Every accurate report made me trust more. Every caught error made me trust more. Every honest conversation about difficult topics made me trust more. By 2018 I wasn't thinking about trusting him. I just did. Automatically. The way you trust that the floor will hold your weight when you step on it. This kind of trust is a gift when it's deserved. When it's not, it's something else entirely. The company continued to grow. 2018 was good. 2019 was even better. 2020 should have been a disaster because of everything happening in the world, but instead we grew. Companies needed technology consulting more than ever. We were perfectly positioned. I started taking a real salary. For the first time in these 5 years I can say, yes, it could continue. I began to believe I had built something sustainable. I allowed myself to relax a little for the first time. But there were things I noticed. Small things. Things that didn't quite fit but were easy to explain away. The first thing was in 2019. Our accountant Patricia, a quiet woman who had been with us from the beginning, mentioned during a routine review that some expense reports seemed unusual. Consulting fees paid to vendors she had never heard of that didn't appear in our project files. Companies with generic names. I asked. He smiled with that easy, familiar smile, and explained it was standard practice. Subcontractors for specialized work. Technical consultants brought in for specific projects. Nothing unusual. I believed him. Patricia seemed to believe him too, or at least she stopped asking questions. The expense reports continued. I didn't look at them closely. He managed that side. That was the arrangement. The second thing was in 2021. We were meeting with an investor for a potential growth round, and during due diligence, he asked a question that stayed in my mind longer than it should have. Why were our profit margins below industry standard? Similar companies operated at 22 to 25%. We were at 16%. I didn't have an answer. I looked across the table expecting an explanation, and one was provided. Aggressive reinvestment. Positioning for growth. The cost of building infrastructure. The investor seemed satisfied. I wrote the question down in a notebook and told myself I would look into it later. Later never came. There was always something more urgent, another client, another deadline. The question got buried. I forgot. The third thing was more personal. His wife, Vanessa. I had known her for years. She was warm, welcoming, the kind of person who remembered birthdays and sent thoughtful gifts. She treated me like family. But somewhere in late 2022 she started acting differently. Distant at company events. Avoiding eye contact. Answering questions with the minimum words possible. At the Christmas party, she cornered me near the bar and asked something strange. Exactly how much money does he make? Her voice was almost desperate. I told her the number, our agreed-upon salary, and watched her face do something complicated. She nodded slowly. That's what I thought, she said, and walked away without explanation. I should have followed her. I should have asked what she meant. But I told myself it was marriage stuff, private stuff, none of my business. I told myself I was imagining the tension because the holidays were stressful. I told myself everything was fine because the alternative was too unsettling to consider. Then there was the house. Early 2023. He casually mentioned he had bought a vacation home. Lake Tahoe. Cabin he called it. $1.4 million paid in cash. I was stunned. Not because he had bought a house, but because I didn't know he had that kind of money. We made good salaries but not pay cash for a lake house salaries. When I asked, he mentioned an uncle who had passed away. An inheritance he hadn't expected. I congratulated him. I didn't ask which uncle. I didn't ask when this uncle had died or why he had never mentioned him before. Asking felt rude, like questioning good fortune instead of celebrating it. But something about that house bothered me. Something I couldn't articulate. It sat in the back of my mind like a splinter I couldn't reach. The months after that were strange. He seemed the same as always. Friendly, competent, present, but something had shifted. He checked his phone more during meetings. He took calls outside instead of at his desk. Sometimes he seemed distracted, as if part of his mind was always somewhere else. I noticed. I didn't say anything. I told myself he was probably dealing with personal issues, maybe something with Vanessa, maybe something with the new property. I gave him space. I maintained the trust that had been built over nearly a decade. Vanessa got stranger too. At a company gathering in February, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. She seemed like she wanted to tell me something but couldn't find the words. Or maybe she was afraid. I didn't know why she was afraid. I smiled at her and asked how she was doing. She said fine. She looked away. She left early without saying goodbye. Every Friday, he would prepare a weekly financial summary. Every Friday, I would glance at it and file it away. Every Friday for 6 years. The numbers always looked right. The summaries always made sense. I had no reason to question them. I had no reason to question him. And then an email arrived. March 15, 2023. A Tuesday morning. 7:43 a.m. I was sitting at my desk early drinking coffee, reviewing notes for a client meeting. My inbox refreshed and there it was. From an address I didn't recognize. A random string of letters at a ProtonMail domain. Subject line empty. Email body empty. Just one attachment. I almost deleted it. Something completely unknown. No context. Every red flag for spam or phishing. Something I couldn't make sense of, whatever it was stopped me. Something made me click. The file downloaded. It opened in a new window. A spreadsheet. 847 rows. Each row contained the same 4 columns. Date, amount, source account, destination account. The source accounts looked familiar. Corporate accounts I recognized from the occasional bank statements that crossed my desk. The destination accounts were names I had never seen. Companies I had never heard of. I started scrolling. Transaction after transaction after transaction. Every Friday. Going back years. Always small amounts. The kind of amounts that look like routine business expenses if you're not paying attention. The kind of amounts that don't trigger alerts. I scrolled for a long time. The numbers blurred together. My coffee went cold. The client meeting started without me. At 8:30 I finally stopped scrolling. I didn't understand what I was looking at. But I knew, with the cold certainty that comes from pattern recognition too obvious to deny, that something was very, very wrong. Something had been wrong for years. And I had never seen it. I closed the spreadsheet. I sat very still. I tried to think clearly about what to do next. The first thing I did was call in sick. I told him I had a stomach problem, something from a restaurant, nothing serious, but I didn't want to spread it. He was understanding. He offered to bring soup. The kindness in his voice churned my stomach in ways that had nothing to do with illness. I managed to decline politely. I managed to sound normal. Then I hung up and stared at the wall for an hour. The second thing I did was make a phone call. A forensic accountant. Someone who could look at this spreadsheet and tell me if what I was seeing was real, or if I was losing my mind. His name was William Chan. Former FBI. Financial crimes specialist. $350 per hour. I didn't hesitate. I paid the retainer from my personal savings. I couldn't use company accounts without raising questions, and sent him everything I had. The third thing I did was wait. William worked for 3 days. I didn't go to the office. I told everyone I was recovering from food poisoning. I lay on my couch staring at the ceiling, running scenarios through my head, trying to find an innocent explanation for 847 transactions I didn't recognize. Every scenario I constructed collapsed under its own weight. The transactions were too systematic. The pattern was too consistent. Something was happening. Something had been happening for years. On the 4th day, William called. We need to get together and meet face to face. It's important, he said. I've found what you were afraid of. And I've found more. William's office was in an ordinary building downtown, the kind of place you'd pass 100 times without noticing. I sat across from him at a conference table covered with printouts, charts, and highlighted documents. He looked tired. Probably looked worse. The spreadsheet is real, he said. Every transaction corresponds to actual transfers from your corporate accounts. I verified them against bank records. I already knew this. I had known it from the moment I started scrolling, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to my chest. Where did the money go? William slid a document across the table. Corporate registrations from Delaware. Shell companies. 3 of them, all filed with the same registered agent, all listing the same person as sole owner and beneficiary. I looked at the name. The room went very quiet. He created these companies between 2016 and 2018, said William. He registered them as vendors in your accounting system. Every Friday for 6 years, he processed payments to these companies for consulting services that were never rendered. The amounts were always small enough not to trigger scrutiny. $3,000 here. $7,000 there. Nothing that would raise an audit flag. How much? My voice sounded strange. Distant. As if someone else was speaking. William slid another document across the table. A summary page. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, $2,347,892.16. $2,347,892.16. I also found evidence of expense report fraud, William continued. Inflated invoices. Padded contractor payments. Client retainer skimming. When you add everything together, total losses exceed $2.3 million and may approach $2.5 million. I looked at the number. I'm trying to perceive what this meant. I can't make sense of it. 6 years of work. 6 years of trust. 6 years of Friday reports I glanced at and filed away without question. $2.3 million. The Tahoe house, I said. William nodded. Purchased through one of the shell companies. The inheritance story is fabricated. He bought himself a vacation home with your money, while you were driving a Honda Civic. I thought about all the times I had declined raises, reinvesting profits instead. I thought about the vacations I hadn't taken, the luxuries I hadn't bought, the sacrifices I had made to grow a company that someone else was systematically draining. I thought about the Monday morning smiles, the quarterly meetings, the friendship I thought we had built over 9 years. It was all performance. It was all lies. There's one more thing, said William. I traced the anonymous email. The ProtonMail account is untraceable, but the timing and content point to someone with inside access to his personal files. Someone who wanted you to know what he was doing. Vanessa. The strange behavior at company events. The desperate question about his salary. The expression on her face when I answered. His wife sent it, I said. That's my guess too. I reached out to her that afternoon. A simple message to her personal email. I received something. I think we need to talk. She responded within an hour. Yes. Coffee tomorrow. Alone. We met at a cafe 15 miles from anywhere either of us would normally be. She looked exhausted. She looked like someone who had been carrying an impossible burden and was finally about to set it down. I found it 3 months ago, she said. On his laptop. I was looking for vacation photos and said, I found everything. The shell companies. The transfers. The real source of our lifestyle. She had spent those 3 months investigating her own husband, tracking accounts, documenting evidence, discovering that the man she had married, the father of her children, was systematically stealing from his business partner while pretending to be her friend. Why didn't you confront him? I asked. I did. Once. I asked about a small charge I didn't recognize on a credit card. He lied so smoothly, so automatically, that I realized I was married to someone I didn't know. I realized everything was a lie. And if I was going to leave him, I wanted him to have nothing left when I did. She looked at me across the table with something that might have been guilt or might have been relief. You are my weapon, she said. I'm sorry for using you, but I couldn't report it myself. You can. You have the rights. You can destroy him in ways I can't. I understood. I didn't blame her. She was giving me the truth, the most valuable gift I had ever received. Without her, I might never have learned. Without her, he might have continued until there was nothing left to take. What do you want? I asked. I want him to lose everything. His company, his freedom, his reputation. I want him to know that you can't build a life on lies and expect it to last. I told her I could make that happen. The plan took 6 weeks. I needed the forensic accountant to document everything with bulletproof precision. I needed lawyers to confirm that fraud triggered immediate termination and equity forfeiture. I needed law enforcement, specifically Detective Sarah Martinez from the Financial Crimes Division, to be present when the confrontation happened. Everything had to be perfect. No room for excuses. No opportunity to talk his way out. For 6 weeks, I went to work every day and acted as if everything was normal. I sat across from him in meetings. I reviewed his fabricated reports. I laughed when he made jokes. I asked about his children. I maintained the performance of partnership while building the case that would end it. Every conversation felt like acting. Every handshake felt like betrayal of myself. But I did it because I wanted him completely blindsided. I wanted him to walk into a room expecting routine and walk out in handcuffs. Vanessa and I coordinated the timing. She would file for divorce on the morning of April 28th. I would call an emergency board meeting the same morning. The forensic accountant would present. The lawyers would witness. The detective would be waiting. April 28th, 2023. A Friday. The same day of the week he had chosen for 6 years of theft. He arrived at 9:55, 5 minutes early, looking relaxed and confident. $3,000 suit. Easy smile. The same face I had trusted for almost 10 years. What is this about? He asked. You were being mysterious. Sit down. The presentation lasted 22 minutes. 847 transactions. Shell companies. Bank records. Everything documented. Everything traced. I watched his face transform, confusion, concern, fear, as the evidence piled up like a wall with no doors. When it was over, I spoke. You are being removed from the board effective immediately. Your equity is forfeited under the fraud provisions of our operating agreement. You will receive no severance, no payout, nothing. He looked at me. The mask was gone now. What I saw underneath was cold, calculating. Someone I had actually never met. Miranda. We're partners. We've known each other. $2.3 million. 847 transactions. 6 years. I nodded toward the door. Detective Martinez. She stepped forward. Badge visible. You are under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent. I watched him get handcuffed in the room where we had celebrated every success. I watched him being walked past employees who had trusted him. I watched his face as he realized everything was gone. Vanessa filed for divorce that afternoon. By the time he made bail, the locks had been changed and his family was in Oregon. The trial was in September. He pleaded not guilty. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on 23 counts. The judge called him a predator who used trust as a weapon. 12 years in federal prison. No parole for the first 8 years. I recovered $847,000 of the $2.3 million he stole. The rest is gone forever. Meridian survived. Smaller. Honest. Rebuilt from the wreckage. I hired a new CFO with third-party audit requirements. I now check every account myself. I trust carefully and verify constantly. He will be released in 2035. He will be 54 years old. A convicted felon with no career, no family, no future. His children don't speak to him. His wife remarried. Everything he built was built on theft and now it's gone. My name is Miranda. I trusted someone with everything I had built. For 6 years, he took from me while shaking my hand and telling me we were partners. His wife sent me a spreadsheet. I had him arrested in our conference room. I watched him lose everything in a single afternoon. I don't know if that's justice, but it's what he deserved.